the voice of Nassau Community College.
I love this station.
90.3 WHPC.
WHPC HD Garden City.
I'm not your stepping stone. I'm not your stepping stone.
90.3 WHPC. Welcome to From the Press Box. I am your co-host, Rob Leonard. And joining me is my brother, Tim.
How you doing?
As we talk sports every Monday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we should say Tim, of course, is an award-winning sports writer who's won many awards over the years. Anyway, we're here every Monday, 516-572-7440. If you'd like to make a comment or have a question. The NBA Finals are happening right now. And let's be honest, Golden State is just looking fantastic. And Cleveland is not looking fantastic. It's, I guess, the best way. The Warriors are up 2-0. Now, mind you, both games are in Golden State. Mm-hmm. But they're really playing well.
They've played extraordinarily well so far in those first two games. But the one thing that, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. Number one, this is exactly where we were last year.
Right.
And, of course, I'm sure you remember, brother,
yes, I
that
do.
Cleveland won the series.
That's true. They came back.
In 7 games.
That's right.
And they actually wound up being down 3-1. Right. So the Warriors split in Cleveland.
And if I remember right, you said they were going to come back.
Yes, I did.
So I'm just letting you know.
Yes. Pat myself on the back. Like you when we talk about the Yankees later, I'm sure you'll pat yourself on the back again like you do every week. But let's not forget that the Cavaliers aren't just going to roll over, all right? But let's also not forget that this Warrior team is not the same as last year's Warriors team. And the reason for that is one very large human being by the name of Kevin Durant.
Yes.
Who is not only 6'10" and can handle the ball and shoot 3-pointers, but is also having the kind of an impact that the Warriors expected him to have when they signed him in the offseason. And the Warriors didn't have a third player like that last year. You could say maybe Klay Thompson was supposed to be that person, but with him, he and Curry and Draymond Green, now the Warriors have two of the best players. And Jalen, was it Jalen Rose? No, Paul Pierce, I think, last night after the broadcast said that Kevin Durant and Steph Curry were the best tandem in NBA history, which that's going a little far. You're talking about one season.
Yeah,
all right.
Let's.
I mean, let's. I mean,
maybe in a season, looking at it for one season, but not for.
But you have to
have a
look,
couple of seasons.
Yeah, but you have to look at history. I mean, we're talking Shaq and Kobe. We're talking Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
Yeah.
We're talking. I mean, there's
Clyde and Pearl.
They wouldn't qualify in that group because the rest of the Knicks were so good. They didn't have to be those two dominant guys.
That's true.
But you can look through history and find tandems that are I want to say at least as good, but it's not that far off because Kevin Durant has in 2 games in the finals played pretty much as well as a player can play. 38 points in game 1, 33 points last night. The numbers that he's putting up, and not even just numbers, but the way he's doing it in a very dominating kind of way. And last night was going right at LeBron James for a lot of his points.
Yeah.
So that is the difference to me in what's going on so far, even though the results are the same and the Warriors are still up 2-0, but they look so much more impressive this year doing it. Well, and that's the difference.
The question is, when does LeBron? Well, he's actually has.
LeBron had a triple-double last night.
He didn't have a bad game.
He can't play a whole lot better than he did last night.
That's true. But when do the other players see what LeBron's doing and say, okay, we have to wake up a little bit? Because I actually think that the Warriors are going to win it in 4. It seems that way right now.
They haven't lost a playoff game yet.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the things.
I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I genuinely think Cleveland is going to win
Game 3.
That's never
happened before, right?
What, a sweep? Of course it has.
16 games?
Oh, no.
I think that's it.
I'm trying to remember because Moses Malone was famous for the faux and faux when he was playing for the Sixers and one of the local writers asked him, so Moses, what do you think about the playoffs? What do you think is going to happen? And Moses just looked at him and said, faux and faux. And the reporter was like, what are you talking about? And he says, we're going to win every series, 4 games. Like he had to explain it because all he said, like literally, he said faux and faux, and it was like, okay, those aren't words.
Well, Moses never went to college.
No, Moses, Moses was a great guy. Moses just didn't speak a lot. Moses was a real quiet guy. But that's a famous NBA quote. And the Sixers wound up losing 1 game, so they didn't do as Moses predicted they would.
Right.
But they came really close. Right. But that was. There's another tandem with Moses and Dr. J. Although Dr. J was a little later in his career at that point.
Right.
But those teams were phenomenal, and you're looking at a Golden State team. Last night after the game, they were talking on channel or ABC about all kinds of. They were going into all kinds of different directions and craziness. But they were talking about how this Warriors team, as the old hedge, can they keep them together? But they can,
right?
All right, because you can sign your own guys. So it basically all it comes down to is, do the Warriors want to pay all these guys and go that far over the cap? Well, if you can dominate the NBA for the next 5 years, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about turning this franchise into a Boston Celtic-like dynasty,
and that's why you become an owner. Because you want that moment where
I would pay the money.
I would too.
Because you look at the Cavaliers, and LeBron has complained for much of the season about the Cavaliers trying to add people and what they need to win a title. But the problem with that is they're already so far over the cap. And the guy who owns the Cavaliers, I forget his name. I think it's Dan Gilbert. But he's kind of complained about, hey, what haven't I given you? Like, you keep wanting more and more. We're already like $50 or $70 million over the cap,
right.
And that's coming out of my pocket.
Right. Yeah.
So I can't really blame the guy.
One thing I am liking about this playoffs is I like the fact that it's Cleveland, Golden State.
Why?
Because
I'm kind of getting sick of that.
Well, I think next year if it's that, then it's
it will be.
Well,
unless the Celtics can overtake the Cavaliers, and I don't think that. I think that's at least 2 or 3 years away from happening.
Oh, I think Phil Jackson's going to have a say about this with the Knicks. Bringing them back.
Stop the drugs. Stop taking drugs. Like Mr. Hand would say, "Are you on dope?" That's from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, for those of you too young to get the reference.
Yes. But I next year, if it's the same 2 teams, I'll be
I can't
excited.
imagine why it wouldn't be.
Well,
because look at it this way. Who in the West can beat the Warriors? Basically, you're looking at the Spurs. And if Manu Ginobili retires, which is kind of the word going around right now, then the Spurs are going to be further away from the Warriors, not closer.
Right.
So now are the Spurs going to be able to sign a free agent, and does a free agent exist? I think you're at least a couple of years away from the Philadelphia 76ers being good. And I know whoever is out there is laughing because the Sixers, oh, wow, they're awful. Yeah, they are awful, but they have a lot of very good young players. And a lot of guys who in the next 2 or 3 years, you watch, that franchise is going to take a complete U-turn. And they're going to wind up being one of the best 3 teams in the East within 3 years. Guaranteed. I'm guaranteeing this right now.
Let me write that down.
All right. But again, a lot of that relies on them utilizing their draft pick this year on somebody who can make a difference. And they don't necessarily need a guard per se, a point guard.
Right.
I actually talked about this on one of the other shows. Kyle Lowry is a free agent.
The home stretch.
A couple weeks ago. But Kyle Lowry is a free agent. One of the guys on the home stretch pointed it out, that Lowry would be a perfect fit for the Sixers because he's a Philly kid, and they need a point guard. And he is an elite point guard. So if Philly could get him to come in, and Ben Simmons is the guy who they drafted number 1 last year overall, but didn't play because he broke his foot. He is a ball-handling forward at 6'10". I mean, he's like a point guard almost. He's like a point forward. but he's got those the kind of handling skills. So he's a guy who it's almost like having 2 point guards on the floor. So, I mean, the Sixers are they're poised to do very good things. I think signing Kyle Lowry, because they're not going to get a point guard in this draft because, well, I mean, they can, but they're not going to get one of the top 2 guys because Fultz is going to go to Boston and Lonzo Ball is going to go to the Lakers. I mean, that's pretty much preordained at this point, unless something crazy happens. I mean, I would laugh if the Lakers decided not to draft Lonzo Ball because his father would go absolutely insane.
Yeah, but he's a good player. They need him. So.
Well, I mean, they already have a point guard, but in D'Angelo Russell, but Lonzo Ball's better.
Yeah,
I mean, D'Angelo Russell hasn't really shown himself to be an elite kind of player yet. I like to think that Lonzo Ball is better.
Once they talk to the father.
The father needs to calm down.
I think someone from the NBA is going to quietly visit him and say, "Hey, if it's just going to be about you specifically, then we might have a problem here." Something along those lines.
That visit should have happened already.
Well, it can't because he's not in the NBA.
It doesn't matter. He will be.
He will be, but you can't legally do it until he signs.
Well, they could do whatever they want.
Well, no, because
why not?
Because technically
they can have that visit.
They could look. It could look like he's it's a.
He's already
agent.
declared for the draft,
right? But it could be some.
Doesn't matter.
No,
please trust me, it doesn't matter.
Anyway,
but for that situation, the father he needs to shut up. I mean, he's putting a target on his son's back before his son has even played an NBA game, and that's even with his teammates. Never mind with opponents. He's selling sneakers for $495 a pop.
That's a lot.
Which is insane. I can't stand this brand, this Big Baller brand. I can't stand it. Hate the name.
That's the name of the.
That's the name, Big Baller. I mean, the kid's name is Lonzo Ball. I get why.
Is Nike part of this?
No. It's their own brand.
They started their own.
They started their own. He wanted to go through Nike.
Was he Stephon Marbury?
More or less, but he wanted to go through Nike or Reebok or Adidas or one of the big sneaker companies. And he wanted $1 billion from him.
Wow.
I mean, he said this with a straight face because his logic was, pay me $1 billion, you'll get my son who's coming into the NBA this year, you'll get the other son who's going to be in the NBA in a couple of years, and then there's a third son who's just starting high school.
Right.
So now 5 years down the road, and people are looking at him like, dude, you got to get off the crack pipe. Because he's insane, and he's talking about how
and this isn't like some guy joking around.
He's dead serious, and he's talking about how Lonzo is better than Steph Curry, and I'm like, dude, Steph Curry was the MVP. Like, you're insane. Your son is 19 years old. If he's that, I don't even know if he turned 19 yet. And you're sitting there talking about how he's better than established NBA players and the MVP of the league. It's ridiculous, but. The problem is here we are talking about this idiot, and that's what he wants. He wants everybody talking about him, so I'm going to stop.
Well, I agree. It reminds me of like Tim Tebow in a way. People like talk about him. I don't know why.
But Tebow wasn't. I mean, Tebow wasn't about drawing attention to himself. It was just the way he lived his life.
But the way people talk, it's like there's nothing to talk about. Oh, let's talk about Alonzo Ball.
The Christian populace embraced Tim Tebow because of the lifestyle he leads,
right.
And that's what they wanted.
Not because he was a good quarterback.
He was a good college quarterback, not a good pro quarterback, and really hasn't been a good minor league baseball player thus far. But people want to talk about him. They want to talk about what he's doing. He's almost like a Kardashian of sports. He's famous for being. I mean, at least he did something in college, so he's famous for that. But as far as the pros go, he really hasn't been a very good player.
Right.
He had a couple of moments for the Broncos. He won a playoff game for him, so good for him. But he didn't do anything for any of the last couple of teams he played for.
Also, we should say Game 3 for the NBA Finals is Wednesday at 9 p.m.
9 o'clock. That's insane.
Well, it's part. What bothers me, and this is something Phil Mushnick talks about a lot, but we tend to agree with Phil on a lot of things. What bothers me about the whole thing is they want the West Coast to watch it at 6 o'clock.
Which I get,
but the problem is on the East Coast, the game doesn't end until midnight.
Close to it,
and
anyway.
On Wednesday, a lot of people are going to be going to sleep at 11 o'clock or even earlier. I don't know why.
Before the game is over.
You want more people. There's more people on the East Coast than the West Coast. So I don't know why you wouldn't start the game at 8 o'clock, cover prime time, and then the West Coast at 5 o'clock, because that's the way it works anyway.
Yeah.
Everything on the West Coast, they used to being behind the